Hey guys, welcome to Laurie's Little Studio. I'm Laurie, and today we are going to make View D of the McCall's Fashion Accessories M5897. I'm filming this intro after I did the video, and I want to tell you that throughout the video I use this product in this wallet, and I cannot recommend it. So I would suggest that you get just some heavy duty interfacing. You could use sew-in, you can use the fusible type. However, be aware that as you're going around the wallet, you're going to want that outside of your seam allowances. So, my apologies for this, but I do want to show that even though this is too heavy, it did turn out, and this little project is very simple. Now I am going to do it again. I will do it in another video coming up, but I'm going to kind of glam that one up a little bit using some fancy fabrics and some fancy threads, and just show another side of our little rustic wallet. But in any case, it's fun, it's quick, it's easy, and as a bonus, if you're not familiar with putting zippers in and you want to do a project where you have a little zipper top on a little bag like this, this is probably the easiest one I've ever done. So I wanted to tell you that. I wanted to mention this is too thick. It's extremely heavy. There may be a product by Fusion Shape that's not this heavy. I don't know. This was my first go with using it, and I can show you what it looks like real quick. Right out of the box, this is how thick it is, and it really doesn't have a whole lot of give. When you get two pieces of it, one on each side together, it's very, very difficult. And I had to turn it. Well, you'll see. Anyway, let's get to it. So I'm going to show you the guide drawing. Sometimes that's a little bit easier to see. So View D is this right here, which I think is just adorable. I don't know if they have a back view. No, I don't see a back view drawn out. But we will be seeing that as we go along. Looks like there's quite a number of pattern pieces, and that even have the quilting guides, very much like paper piecing. So anyway, I will be looking for the wallet pieces when I get through all of that, but that's way off in the future. Well, I say way off, it could be 15 minutes from now, I'm not sure. Okay, so what I need to do whenever I start with a new pattern is, of course, first thing is you like the pattern, so you have the pattern. The other thing, and this is McCall's Fashion Accessories, the pattern number is M5897. And it is Artful Offerings by Karina Hiddle, which I can put there. The back side of your pattern envelope will give you a list of what you need for each of these views. I'm going to start with View D, so I will look under View D down here, and it says I'm going to need 22 inches by 14.5 inches of fabric. I need some interfacing, and it's just basically a scrap. I need a remnant of fabric that is 12 inches by 13 inches. I need some batting, and I need a remnant which is 12 inches by 13 inches. The 22 inches by 14.5 inches is for the bow, the band, and the handle. All right, the notions for View D are 1 9-inch zipper, 1 3/4 inch D-ring, a 1/4 yard of 3/8 inch ribbon, and 16 3-inch fabric in contrasting colors for the patchwork. And that's what this is. I'm assuming it's on the front as well as on the back. So kind of an interesting list of items. The suggested fabrics for all of the views are novelty cotton, cotton blends, and then you might need to get extra if you have a one-way design or if you're just trying to match stripes or plaids. I have to dye my fabric. I have to choose my fabric, and then I have to dye this fabric because this is the band, the bow, and the handle. And these fabrics are all very muted, tea-dyed, coffee-dyed fabrics that I love, but the contrast between this pile and this fabric is just too stark. This has more of sort of an eggshell, more worn looking, travel weary kind of fabric that I do like. So they are folded. They are fat quarters. I did order these on Amazon. I don't know if they're still available. One thing I recommend doing is, if you're new to the realm of fat quarters, just go online or go to your fabric store. I'll be honest with you, I don't find fat quarters all that easy to look at when I go to big chain stores like Joann Fabrics or Hobby Lobby or Michael's, because they're bundled up and you but you shouldn't take them apart and look at them. If you look online where your colors may be slightly askew, the things may be a little bit different, they may be harder to find, you'll still get a full view. There'll be a little piece of each one available for you to look at so that you will see all of the collection rather than the top and the bottom only, which is what I end up looking, and then I'll just have like a little tiny peek at the ones on the side. So look online and then decide, you know, kind of what your colorway is, what kind of a print style you want, and then maybe go out in the world and find it. You can also buy a half a yard of fabric and cut your own fat quarters. I'll put the information about how to cut a fat quarter right here. So that should help if you want to just use your own fabrics or go purchase some fabrics. Okay, so I need to cut the fabric from these. I think it was 16. Let me double check on my pattern. I will need 16 3-inch fabric squares. Okay. So this Omni grid is 3 inches wide. So that makes it very simple. Oh, sorry about the ring light. There we go. It's 3 inches. 1, 2, 3. And it's really easy to just cut my little squares. You can also use a template, which I prefer, to be honest with you. I will take an old card, something out of cardstock, draw a 3-inch square template, and then I can just mark those off, cut them out however I want to do it. It's a bit tedious, but it's definitely worth it for the look that you will get. A 3x3 template that I can use to mark my fabric. You can use a friction pen, which is just heat erase ink on this fabric. I would mark it from this side right here, As I was saying before we were so rudely interrupted by the phone, is I use this and I will just turn my print fabric to this side where it's so easy to see. I know my fabric isn't going to be, hopefully I won't be using this side. I mean, some people do for a look, and that's absolutely fine. But if I choose to use my pencil to mark out my little 3x3s or my 5x5s or whatever size I'm going to be cutting, it won't really matter if it's on this side of the fabric. And I can just use my template, draw around. I can even fussy cut if I want to, just like that. So I need 16. All right, I think I have a plan for how I'm going to do the 16. And when I come back, I'll show you what they look like. I need to starch my fabric and press my fabrics. I'll just say all 3 of these. And one of the things that I wanted to talk about, and I've gone over it before in other videos, but it's just kind of spliced in. So I'm going to quickly give you a little review of how I handle this part of my projects when I'm using a cotton fabric. So I'll be right back. Okay, so what I do is, it doesn't matter how big or how small my cotton fabric is, I'm going to starch it. I love the way it feels, especially for a project like this where I need something that has some structure. This little bag or wallet needs structure in the construction phase. It likely will soften up over time, and that's fine. But the bonus is, if you after you've got your little wallet made, if you want it to have that feeling again, all you have to do is spray it with your starch and let it dry, and you'll have that same crispy feeling that you had when you were making it. Okay, so what I do is I take my fabrics. Normally I would do this over a different surface, but this is fine right here. I don't mind. I can just wipe off this. It won't hurt it. The 2 that I use the most are this right here. They're both by the same company, non-sponsored, no affiliation. I buy these products with my own money, and I'm not being paid to say I like one or the other or these over another brand. It doesn't matter. This is just what I use. So they're both a Faultless, as you can see, both by Faultless. This is Niagara Heavy Finish, and this is just Faultless Heavy Finish. Same exact thing, different marketing livery. We'll just put it that way. This one's almost empty, and I'm not going to bother using that one for now. I shake it up good. I don't even know if it says to do that, but I do. Shake it up. Does it say? No. Doesn't say to do it, but I do, because that's who I am. All right, and then I'm just going to spray it really heavily. I want to be able to see the starch, and I'm going to spray both the front and the back. Did I say I spray it heavily? I do. Okay, and then I drape this over the edge of my ironing board and let it dry completely. So I'll do these 2. Okay guys, so sorry about the bump. Tomorrow I'm planning to dye this fabric with a coffee. I feel like the coffee, well, we might have to experiment. We might just do 2 little swatches. We'll do a little bit with some tea and a little bit with some strong coffee. Then we'll find out which of the 2 closely matches the fabric that is now drying over on my ironing board. And once I get that taken care of, we'll be able to start cutting out the fabric that we need for our little wallet. And you'll find out why I have some of these strange bits and bobs that I purchased for my wallet. We'll use those as well. So for this particular project, if you're interested, you will need all the basic sewing notions: pins, scissors, a sewing machine, unless you choose to sew your project by hand, which is completely possible. You'll need a little 9-inch zipper or something you can shorten to 9 inches. And I recommend, if you're going to shorten a zipper, use a nylon zipper. And a D-ring. You will need some fuse and shape, or some type of interfacing that's nice and sturdy. And from there, we'll talk about, how we're putting it together. You, of course, will need, your fabric and your thread and your pin, your straight pins, or your clips. If you don't have clips, you can use office supply binder clips, I think is what they call these. And I will list those supplies at the end of this video. Okay guys, I'm back. It's a new day. Today is Tuesday, January the 4th of 2022. And my fabric is starched and pressed. So I'm going to take my little 3x3 template that I made yesterday, and I don't think I'm going to worry too much about where I place this. In other words, I'd rather mark it from the wrong side of my fabric, and I'm just going to cut a bunch. I may end up cutting more than 16, and that's fine, and then I can kind of mix and match. But if I don't see them or cut with intention, then I have a little bit more freedom to design this little wallet as I go. Alright, they're cut. Let's unpin them, and then we'll just kind of spread them out and take a look and see what we have. Alright, so 1, 2, 3. Okay, so there's a treble clef right there, so that is easily figured out. I'm going to cut 2 inches. I like the idea of having enough to play with. Okay, now this is much better. Yep. So I can fold this, press it, and then stitch it, which will be kind of nice. And it's 1/2 inch instead of 3/8, but you can purchase the ribbon as it says on the pattern. I knew that I wasn't going to buy ribbon, so there's a lot of ribbon use in this particular pattern. I'm just going to make my own as I go through each of these, which is why I bought this fabric. Now, if this proves to be irritating to me because it's askew, I may just buy something else. I don't know at this point. But for now, I'm going to go get a bowl of tea. This is tea. Alrighty, so here we are. The fabric has been tea dyed. Turned out great. I've ironed it so that it does have some stability. The heat will have set that dye. This is what it looked like before. And I feel like the tea dyed version is a much more appropriate color for this project. 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, basically 30-inch zippers. I just don't feel the color. I mean, maybe the lavender kind of works because this has a yellow undertone. And if you look at the color wheel, lavender is opposite of yellow. Violet is opposite of yellow. So if we needed to use one, I think the violet would be the best under the circumstances. However, I do happen to have this one, and I think I'm just going to use this. This zipper is, so I have a 15-inch zipper. Got to cut out the pattern pieces, or I need to measure. Let's do that real quick. Let's see. For view D, okay guys, I'm back. It's been a minute. I didn't do much of anything on this project yesterday, which was Wednesday the 5th of January 2022, because I went to World Market with my daughter Jessica, and just had a blast getting out of the house. I hadn't been out in quite some time. I mean, we could probably refer to it as weeks. And it felt really good to actually get out of the house for a minute. But here we are back with our McCall's M5897 little bag wallet combo pattern. And I have all of my pattern pieces, paper pattern pieces have been cut. And I've traced and cut out all of the pieces on number 29 that I don't want to lose. So this is one of those multi-pattern piece blocks that occasionally will come in a pattern, most often in a craft pattern. It's just a big combination piece, and you have the option to do a one-time cut where you're going to just cut these out, every individual piece within this block, and that'll be it. You won't have the option to put this back together. But if you do that, I recommend that you mark each little piece with what it is. Now, in this particular case, every one of these in this pattern is number 29. It's piece number 29. So because there are 3 bands, there's a band here, there's a band here, and there is a band down here, I decided to give each pattern piece a additional number. So this one is 29.1, this one is 29.2, this one is 29.3, etc., etc., etc. So I'm going to just simply fold this up. I've marked each of the little pieces that I created on Swiss tracing paper. Weird. Okay. Tracing paper with what this is, the pattern number M5897, what the piece name is, wrist loop, and in my numbering system, this one is 29.6. So each one has been traced, marked, and cut out. I have marked the fold lines, which are the solid lines, and I have marked the stitch lines, which are the broken lines. So they've all been done. Now this right here, I don't think I was doing anything with that. This is the fabric that we tea dyed a couple days ago to use for the band that goes around the front, the bow, and the wristlet handle. So that's what that is right there. These are the 16 pieces that we will piece together today to make the front and the back outer. And then we will be cutting out all of these pieces out of this right here, this piece of fabric that has been starched and allowed to dry. So I'm going to put all of my pattern pieces off to the side. This is the zipper. I need a 9-inch zipper, but I'm going to resize this 15-inch zipper. It's a nylon, easy to resize YKK zipper. So off to the side that goes. And this is the piece 29 fabric. Okay, so right here, bag D, it tells us to prepare the front and back 28 and the remnant 29, which we've already done all that. And for the upper front, we're going to stitch 4 of our 3-inch square remnants together along the sides. You decide where those sides are, because unless your fabric, like mine, has a direction, you can mix and match however you want to. If it's solid, obviously just choose a side because they're all 3-inch by 3-inch. I have to make sure when I'm doing mine that they will be correctly oriented. So for example, I have the sheet music, the language, the text, whatever we want to call that, and then sheet music, and then the text. And I don't want this upside down. Some may decide that that would be interesting and they would enjoy having it that way. I don't think I would. So mine will be all this way. And then we're going to do the other 4. And in my case, I'm going to swap it out. Did I flip this over? I have to look for something that makes sense. Okay, I believe that goes that way, and that, and I can, if I have a piece that's got a treble clef, I can tell this is correctly oriented, but some of this does not. Okay, so this will be either the front or the back. There's really, once you get it made, unless you put a bow on it, it's kind of, you know, silly. All right, so the other thing I need to do is decide about the thread. So do I want to use black thread or do I want to use this color? Now the reason I'm talking about that is because I will be doing some quilting to the little front piece and the little back piece. And I've got to decide, do I want to use a contrasting black or a gray or a red? How do I want to do that? And if I use this to construct, do I want to use the same thread for quilting? So that is a decision that you have to make. For me, it's going to be purely about color. And I'm going to look at my thread real quick. I do have red thread, and I love tricolor, you know, sort of a creamy color, a black and a red. They look good together. I also have black. Well, I have to say, just at first glance, I like the black. All right, we're ready to go. So, first thing is I want to make sure that I have these lined up the way I want them visually. That's the main thing. Seam allowances, use 1/2 inch. All right, so we figured out that we have a 1/2 inch seam allowance. So what they're talking about as far as seam allowance goes is the distance between where the needle would enter into your fabric So you take your tape measure, and I like to just use the 1 as my beginning point because I don't trust that this is an actual inch from the end of this metal piece. But anyway, I always just kind of use the 1 as my starting point, and let's say I need a 1/2 inch. So on my sewing machine, it's the second line away from the needle. So let's see, I will take a picture of that and show you what I'm talking about. And I'll pop that picture right. All right, so I'm having to film with my camera in the portrait way, so I know that the video may be a little bit aggravating to watch, but it's what I have. So what I'm going to do is put this 1 inch mark right here, right up next to the sewing needle that I have in the down position, right there. And you can, if I can hold it still, you can see the 1/2 inch mark right there is lined up with the second mark the second long mark on my throat plate. Okay, so in the process of getting that video set up, all of my little pieces are completely messed up. So I'll have to spend some time getting this all put back together. Keep in mind, I need my letters to be facing in the proper direction for me. This one, I think, is upside down. This one goes like this. Yeah, there is the treble clef. So I can orient this little square using that as a guide. And I'm going to put this here. And I'm going to stitch on this side so that when I open it, it will be this way instead of this way. Okay, so as you might be able to see, I've got my raw edges lined up next to the washi tape. Okay, now I need to put my sewing machine in straight stitch, needle down, and the default settings, which for me are 2 stitch length. And when I start sewing, I usually just hold on to these little threads that you can't see. the sewing machine thread off to the side. I'll just hold that with my finger right here on the throat plate. And off we go. Now normally when I do something like this, I would chain stitch, but we're not stitching it in that way. We're stitching it side to side. Okay, so here it is, stitched. And I'm just pressing my seams open like so with my finger. It works beautifully because this fabric is very heavily starched. All right, so the next piece in the lineup would be this one right here. I was watching the word hers to remember that it was in the middle. So I will set it on here, line up these raw edges, and stitch 1/2 inch. And again, I'm just going to hold my finger onto these threads. After I get the first couple of stitches, I can let go. But that just prevents the bobbin thread from being pulled up underneath my fabric, which can happen sometimes. And then we're going to take a 1/2 inch seam. And I want to make sure that my seam allowance stays flat. So I'm going to check it before I get to it. And remove the pin. I don't want to stitch over a pin. We're doing that again, making sure it's flat. Remove this pin. Keeping raw edges together. Okay, there we go. All right, open this. And then finger press that seam right down the middle, like that. I will take this to the ironing board and give it a good press. I want to check to make sure that my seams are aligned. Yes, they are. It's a little bit off right here. So this one, good alignment. This one, good alignment. This one, completely off. So I'm going to just pull these stitches out and kind of get this to fit better. So basically, just gonna flatten this out and take the beveled edge right here of my office ruler, and I want this to be just straightened up. Like that. And the same thing on this side, making sure everything is flat. Okay. These seams, I want them very nicely flattened on the back, so that has to happen. And let's see what our next step is. It's closed. Okay, so we have completed step 1 and step 2, and now we are supposed to pin batting, piece 28, to the wrong side of the front and the back, having the edges even. Alright, so piece 28 is the one that is slightly smaller, and there's 2 of them. So that's written. Of course, I just bled through onto my instructions, but that's okay, I can still read that. Okay, so now I can just cut this out. I don't have to worry too much. I'm going to go ahead and draw my grain line, or my GL, which that's the way I do it on my traced out and cut out patterns. So I have 2 pieces of the batting, and then I also need to cut basically the same thing out of my fuse and shape. This is the interfacing that I'm using. I'm not going to use a lighter weight because I want this to be quite structured. Now this time I will not be using my Kaze scissors on this. This I don't think is in any way, shape, or form a organic fabric. No, 100% polyester. Right there. So I will be using my paper scissors. Not kidding, it is quite tough to cut through. Okay. And I did cut it just slightly bigger than my batting. Okay. So the next thing, moving forward with cutting, which I would really like to just get out of the way, is to make sure I have all of the other pieces cut, because the pattern instructions will assume that I do. So I don't be going along, and then realize, oh, I have to cut this out. All right, so the next thing would be to pin the band to the front and the back, centering over the horizontal patchwork seam. We're supposed to cut 2 so that we have 1 for the front and 1 for the back. And I'm not going to cut the band from this fabric. I'm going to cut the band from this fabric, and I will need to make this strip of fabric as wide as this band. Now their solution to this is to stitch this in half and then turn it to the outside. So the way I plan to make a band for my wallet, and that band is the one that goes across the front right here, is I'm going to stitch 2 of these together, the same length as this, Okay. So we're going to take our scissors and cut the fold like that, and then cut right here. Okay. All right, and then I'm going to stitch these two together along one side, like so. And then I may actually end up having to turn this out, even though it's not one of my favorite things to do. So let me make sure I've got the right length. It's a little bit too long. Okay, I'll measure it after I get it stitched up. Now, since I'm doing this my way, I'm not going to use a 1/2 inch seam allowance for this. Okay, so I have this stitched along both sides, and it's going to be a little bit wider than the band provided, but not that much actually. All right, trim these threads, and then we're going to turn this out. Now there's so many different ways to turn these types of tubes. I'm going to show you a little bit easier method of doing this, and it's actually kind of cool. I'm going to take a safety pin right here. Okay, and I'm going to take a piece of ribbon or elastic or whatever you happen to have. I like to use ribbon. Let's see if I can find a piece. Actually, I can use a piece of this right here. Right, just one piece of the fabric, don't go through both, just through one, and close the safety pin and then turn it to the inside. Even if you have to use the back part of the safety pin, just turn it to the inside like so. It might be a little weird, and usually I use a 2-inch safety pin, but this is what I happen to get my hands on this time. And then just push the safety pin through your tube with the piece of ribbon attached. Once you get this going, you know, just pull it like so. You'll understand once you start doing it, and try to get all the way across if you can. Just slide the fabric out of the way, don't worry about it. And once you get this pin pushed all the way through, just hold on to it with your other hand and slide this piece of fabric right over the top of the ribbon, and voila, it just pulls right through. And then you undo the pin like so, and then pull your ribbon all the way through, and you have your turned tube. And of course I will have to press this, and I'm going to have a seam. If I press it this way where I have a seam on the back, I will have a seam on the front. I don't want to press it that way, so I'm going to press it where I have a seam on each side like so. Before I press it, I'm going to give it a dousing with some starch. Okay guys, I wanted to show you the way the pattern tells you to do the band across the front of the little wallet. I clearly have done mine differently. This is the way they would like you to do it according to their instructions. That is, you will have your piece of fabric for the band, and I've just cut a piece of fabric. This isn't one of the bands that I used. But if your fabric is starched, this should be a very simple process. You will just simply fold under 1/4 inch along both long edges. You can press this at the ironing board, or you can finger press it, however you prefer to do this. And you will just simply press this down 1/4 inch, like so. You do not need to worry about your ends because they will be enclosed in the stitching when you put the wallet together. Stitch across the seam on the front of your little wallet, where you've got the 4 and the 4 little 3-inch charm pack pieces. And then this is what the edges would look like. And I would recommend that you go ahead and use a glue stick to hold it down, because pinning within a project like this, it can be a little difficult. But if you use a glue stick, it won't hurt your sewing machine. It's really simple to hold that item down. I'll just kind of give you a quick demo. We'll pretend like this is the fabric that we're going to be attaching the band to. And with our glue stick, if I can find mine, I like to use the purple. It dries clear, but it's easy for me to see where I'm putting it. So I've got my 2 edges, and I'm just going to put a little bit of glue on each of these long sides, like that. And lay it down. I don't use glue stick on non-organic fiber, but as you can see, it's there, it's in place, and all I have to do is just stitch right along these lines. So you would stitch 1/4 inch here and 1/4 inch here, and then your band is in place. So that's the way the pattern tells you to do it. I just chose to make those pull-through bands. For one thing, they do add stability, especially across the center of anything. And just kind of let it chill. And I need to do the other tube. We're going to put the safety pin on the end of our ribbon. I'm using a strip of fabric, and I'm going to attach it to one side of my tube, not both pieces of fabric, just one. And close the safety pin, and then push it, turn and push it down into the inside, just like this, in between the 2 pieces of fabric. And just kind of pull the tube that you're making will want to kind of not be going over the ribbon, but if you pull from above where you had that safety pin, it'll just work fine. So push it all the way through. Just get this out of your way. You don't have to worry about it. Go all the way to the other end. And if you're doing a really long tube, you would want to use a 2-inch safety pin. Okay, and then there's the pin. I have it right there. I'm going to hold on to it and pull my fabric right over the ribbon. And the tube is turned out. Very easy. Pull the ribbon through, and there you go. All right, so I'm going to douse these with my Faultless Heavy Finish starch and let those be drying. I need to get these pressed as well. Since I've used these 2 pattern pieces, I'm going to fold them up and put them over here out of the way, so I know I'm done with those. I don't need them. So I decided to put a little tiny reel over on my Instagram account. I don't know if it's gonna work, but I was so overwhelmed by the over 1,000 views that my last video had. I am so grateful, and I appreciate it so much. and I wanted to acknowledge that I did notice and I did watch. My family was also keeping up, and it was just a delight to see all that activity on that one video. So thank you again, and I'm going to hit these, few things right here with this heavy duty faultless finish and let these be drying. I noticed that I'm losing my light. I don't think it's even 3 o'clock in the afternoon, but it's very cloudy and dark and dull outside, so my lighting is ebbing away. I've got 2 ring lights right now on in the studio, and still kind of dim. So as you can see, when I do this, I literally just saturate. Okay. It helps me also to line up the edges on that seam like that. I want these to dry. I need to grab a paper towel, and we'll just kind of have them dry right here. Just kind of roll that and you'll get it right on that seam. Do make sure you wash your hands when you're finished. I don't think that there's anything harmful in the starch. I could be wrong. I think it's just starch product, but it will dry your hands out, and we don't need dry flaky hands in the studio or in our sewing room. It's not fun. So if you have trouble and you cannot get this seam to lay flat, or it doesn't want to do, you know, what you're hoping that you're going to get it to do, you can take a pen, and when I say pen, I mean a writing pen. I wouldn't, you know, I'm just going to go ahead and do a pencil. It's going on the inside, and I don't think that the ink will, I don't think the lead will show through. But what I'm going to do is just gently pull the point of this pencil right along that seam, and that will kind of help get it to lay a little flat. And I'm not pulling real hard, I'm not pushing real hard with the pencil tip, but it is helping that seam open up and just kind of get in that groove right there in that edge. And I recommend doing it with either, you know, wet. You could just use water on these if you wanted to, or with starched fabric. And then when it dries, it'll just be a simple matter of touching it up with the iron, and that looks pretty good. A little bit more along this edge, I think. We should be good to go. All right. I see some dry spots, and I don't think it's dried that much already, so I'm going to hit it again. And I mean it, I'm serious when I say I really drench these kinds of projects with my starch. I want them heavily starched. All right, and these have already been starched. I don't need to do it again. I just need to hit these with the iron. One of these will go here, and the other will go there. You know, it's a doubled over piece of fabric, and I think it's going to be lovely to just have that. I like that little bump right there in the front. I'm going to put that there. That looks very intentional. And I had... Right, so you can, you know, you can just fiddle around with this as much as you want to. You can decide if you want to do it this way, or if you want to just fold in those edges. And you could use glue stick to glue it down and then press. You don't have to pin. I do realize that oftentimes trying to pin something within a piece of fabric like this can be a little bit fiddly and hard to do. and it gets to the point where people are too frustrated and they don't like the idea of sewing, and that is not what I want to promote. So I will show you what you can do if you have just a plain old Elmer's glue stick. Okay, so now the next suggestion that we have is to pin the band to the front and the back. And they mean the front and the other piece, not the front and then the back of this. I realize that could be confusing. And you want to center it over these lines. You want to make sure that it's centered over this horizontal line, and you like the way it looks. Like you don't have too many, you know, inches taken up on either the top or the bottom layers. So just get it where you want it to be. And you know, they tell us this all the time, but quite frankly, you could put this down low if you wanted to, or a little high. I don't think it would affect construction. I don't know yet. Let's hold off on that. All right, and then we're going to stitch right across this, the top and the bottom edge of this band. So I'm going to put Elmer's glue stick, just like that. I'm going to flip this over, make sure that this is facing the right direction, and place it as close to center as I can get it. And you can flip it over. You can see your seam on this side, and you can, you know, just visually divide the band on the top of that horizontal line so that you have it where you want it to be, like that. The glue is so helpful. And then I just need to cut the excess. All right, and stitch. Now this is where I need to switch out my thread. I'm going to be top stitching, and I want to use black thread. And there's that one. So these are both done. I have one front and one back, just like that. Hey guys, so it is day 3, and I'm ready to start cutting out the parts and pieces for number 29. This is the handle, so that gets cut from a different fabric. These are our lining pieces, and this would be the bow, which also gets cut from other fabric. I will have to dye, yeah, I'll have to dye some more fabric. Oh, and I'm going to dye it exactly the same way that I dyed this piece, and that is just dunking it in some hot tea. Let it set. I'm going to try to bring it up to this color, and then let it dry, and then press it with some hot steam from my iron. Alright, so the fabric has been dyed. I did use a salt bath on this because if the handle, which is this little piece right here that you actually carry it with, it's like a wristlet, were to, you know, have that much wear and tear, I just felt like it needed the additional oomph of the salt to kind of help that color stay. And not fade out of the fabric. So this is still wet, but I used it as a guide. And this, of course, is dry, and I think we got it pretty close. It's the exact same tee. I don't really see any difference. You can kind of tell. I don't think if there is any shade difference, it's not a glaring difference. Okay, so the next thing is to cut the handle, which we'll do. Alright, so we've cut this out, and these are all the parts and pieces that we have so far. So the next step in this process is to take the batting pieces right here and the interfacing right here and apply them to our two front or our two outside pieces. At this point I haven't decided which is the front and which is the back. So yeah, so I will need to take care of that. Let me move all of this out of the way, because when I apply the batting I need to use my spray adhesive. So this is what I'm using. It's Spray and Bond Basting Adhesive. And I do not spray the adhesive to my fabric because I have found in the past that it will stain. I've seen others do it without any trouble, but I was making an apron for Christmas a few years ago and I accidentally got some on the fabric and it's still there to this day. So I'm not going to risk it. And honestly, I can't remember if I was using Spray and Bond or if I was using 505, but I've just decided that all around I will only spray it on this, on my batting. Okay. It is repositional, so if you need to pick it up and move it once you get it put down, you can do that. You might find you have to spray a little bit again, but I've not had a problem with that. See how it's kind of run off the edge there? So I can just reapply. Now we're going to apply the Fusion shape. Alright, so this is just plain old Kirkland brand from Costco parchment paper. It's not butcher paper, it's not wax paper, it's actual, for real parchment paper. If you don't use parchment paper, you'll have a mess. So I'm going to press this with my iron, and this is how I'll have to do it. You know, my iron will be on this side of the parchment paper. Just give that a good press, make sure it's completely fused, and then when I come back, I'll show you what that looks like. I am back. Now that did take a minute, and it's still hot. I don't really want to put my hands on it yet, but I'm going to let it cool anyway. I feel like if we let it cool, the chances of a good bond would be a little bit better. So, I mean, it's definitely hot. And I mean, I had to just put my iron on cotton and just leave it, let it sit there, and just let it sit there and sit there and sit there. And there could be spots where it hasn't actually made a complete fuse yet, but let's just see what it says here. It takes 5 seconds of continuous heat. Allow the material to cool off. Flip over and repeat step 4. I don't want to do that on the fabric side. I'm afraid it would be hard on my fabric. I'd have to use parchment. So once I get this peeled off, which it's starting to cool off pretty well. If it has actually fused to this side, then I may go over and hit it from the other side. The reason I'm thinking I don't need to is because there is a layer of Warm and Natural between the Fusion shape and my fabric. So kind of thinking maybe I don't need to do that step. If it was just Fusion shape onto my fabric, absolutely. Yeah, it's cooled off a bit. So now we can just peel this, and it has fused very well. But I will tell you, it did take a lot of just put the iron on it and let it sit there. It was a lot longer than 5 seconds. Okay, I do like the way that feels. And onto your parchment paper, which will burn, by the way. You can't go off and leave it. Alright, let me get all this stuff moved, because the next step on this fun project is the little quilting. Alright, so we have both of these quilted, so to speak. I was thinking if I wanted to make an elegant little wristlet, it would be so cute to have it like in pink satin and do silver thread and then put a little glitzy, glimmery button at the intersection. And you'd have like a really pretty little glitzy, glamorous-y looking wristlet. The problem with that is I don't ever go anywhere where something like that would be appropriate. This is definitely more up my alley right here. Earl Grey tea today over ice. It's really good. Alright, so after we've gotten that part done, we are supposed to turn in a seam allowance on the upper edge of the front and back and press. Okay, so remember, this is oriented this way and this is oriented this way. And I'm gonna have to cut out some of this shape and bond or fuse and shape. There we go. Okay, so of course this side of the fusion shape is gluey, so you have to put your, if you're doing it this way, put parchment paper on your ironing surface and then turn your fabric this direction, tuck under that top edge and then press from this direction, and it will stick down to that fusion shape like so. The next step here is to stitch right along the top edge of our zipper. So where the two silver pieces are right there, I need to whip stitch just past that right there. And I will do that with this color thread, and I'm going to do it by hand. They closed instead of splitting off like they do. So we're doing it like so. That's an interesting method. The zipper foot for my sewing machine has a metal piece in the center of it. So as soon as I put that foot on my sewing machine, I try to make it a habit to move my needle over. And I don't worry about which position. I just move it so that when I manually lift my thread after I've rethreaded my bobbin, my needle isn't going to hit that metal piece in the center of that foot. It's just ingrained in my head. There's probably going to be a time when I'll forget, but since I do it manually, it's not mechanical and it's not going to hit it really hard. It's just, I would probably feel a little bit of pressure and go, oh, stop, no. But it's not necessarily on the correct side. So that's all I was saying, was I just get it out of my way and then I don't worry about it. But I am going to carefully unzip and see what that feels like. Yeah, that's perfect. So now I can take my paper scissors and cut just past where I've sewn, like so. And now I have the properly sized zipper. Okay. Alright, so cut these threads. Alright, I think that looks pretty good. Zipper works. I'm not feeling any pull from the fabric. Okay, so here's the zipper. It works just like it's supposed to. And next, we're going to take the front lining and the back lining and fold under and press the top edge for each of these two sides. And we'll be slip stitching right across the top of the inside of this zipper. Okay, so these are the two loops, and it says fold the smaller of the two loops, okay, in half. I'll leave that out. Crosswise, like this. Okay, so now we have to turn this little loop right side out. That can be a challenge. These are just tweezers. I find that a very helpful hack, I guess. I don't like the idea of using the word hack, but in that particular case, I will. All right, so we turn this like this, all right? So here's the D-rings. You can either have that seam that we made on one side, or you can turn it to the inside so that it's running down the center of your little loop. And I think that's what I'm going to do. So just like so. All right, then we're going to put the D-ring right here on the edge. Now you will have a decision to make. You can either have yours on the same side that the zipper pull is on, or you can have it on the opposite side that the zipper pull is on. Whichever decision you decide, make sure that the raw edges of the loop that you made right here are lined up with the raw edges of the outer part of the bag. And you can also decide, do you want to put this on the front or the back? I will go ahead and put mine on the front, like so. And then we're going to baste it down. Just make sure that those two raw edges of the loop are even, because when you're stitching you want to make sure that they're going to get caught. And to be honest with you, I'm just going to stitch mine. I'm not going to bother with the basting. Don't hit the metal ring with your sewing machine needle. Right there. Okay. All right. So there's that. Now, of course, this will be flipped to the outside when our little wallet is completed. But for now, it will hang out with us over here. Okay. So the next step is you will have a piece of ribbon that is 6 inches long. I'm going to make a piece of ribbon. But again, I'm just going to kind of, you know, I'm making up my own ribbon, so to speak. You could use twine if you wanted to. Certainly would not hurt anything. So I am folding the two raw edges to the center of this piece of fabric, like so, and then I'm going to fold them over on top of each other, just making a very narrow strip of fabric that kind of looks like ribbon. And I'm going to run 2 rows of stitches instead of just 1. I'm just going to cut this off at an angle instead of folding it under. So I kind of have a little piece of fabric that looks like a ribbon. All right, so then we take this piece, ribbon or fabric, and decide which of these 2 sections will have the bow. And I think I decided I'm going to go with the music instead of the apothecary. And this is my bow right here. So we're going to this gets pinned right down the center. So between a set of 4, I recommend that you pin it off of the band. You don't want to, wow, that's a thick bunch of stuff. You don't want to pin it here because you're going to be stitching it right here. So pin up here or down here or both. And then it says to pin the ribbon to the front band. This is the front band. We want to center it over the small circle as shown, but honest to goodness, if you didn't mark your small circle, you know where the center is. You've got 4 little 3-inch squares here and 4 here, and there is a seam right down the center, so you can just use that as your guide. And then we're going to stitch it in place. So make sure nothing else is underneath my sewing needle, just this, which is what I want to stitch. And I'm going to use a decorative stitch. I'm going to go with the floral that almost matches the design on my fabric. And you only want to stitch on the band. You don't want to stitch this because this is what you're going to use to tie with. Okay, so there's that right there stitched down, and this is left to tie across our bow. Okay, this is our bow fabric, and we're not quite ready yet to do the bow. We're just gonna, I think we'll put the whole thing together and then we tie the bow on. So we'll come back to the bow. Next we need to make the handle, and this is the handle right here. So we'll undo these pins. And it tells us to fold it in half, right sides together. And we need to leave the ends open. Okay, so my fabric has a lot of starch, and it will just finger press nicely. I just need a good crease down the middle, the long way, like that. If you get enough starch on your fabric, it will act like paper, which is kind of what you want. Okay, I've got everything back the way it was, and then we're going to stitch right down the edge. It doesn't say what our seam allowance is, but it would be on our pattern. So let's take a look. Yeah, okay. Okay. If you need to mark it, you can. Just open out your little handle, take your pattern, and take a pencil or a friction ink pen, whatever you need, and just mark your stitch guide lines. So I've got marks here and here, and when I fold this in half, I can just stitch right down that line right there, which is the width of my presser foot. So while I'm stitching, all I have to do is look at the outer edge, and that'll work fine. Very easy to flip it around. Now, I do not recommend that you pull too much on the end with the pen once you get it out. Just let that be your guide and just pull it through, and then remove the pen, and you have your lovely turned out tube. I'm going to fold this so that the center on the back side is the seam, and basically what that does is, we'll take a look. Our pattern has fold lines right here, and we're supposed to fold this on those fold lines. So look at there, it just fits beautifully, and those are our fold lines. Like that, okay? All right, and then the next step is to insert this handle into the D-ring, like so, and then, and you're probably thinking, well, that's going to be ugly, but the next fun little thing we're going to do is make another loop. This loop will be stitched over this. Okay, so we have fixed this little loop, the handle. I have it pinned where it's basically, I have it pinned so it's, you know, looped over itself, but I'm kind of thinking the way I've done this in the past is I'll fold one end into a little point, you know, like angle in, and then I have like a little point, like, and then I make sure I'm not twisted, it's not curled up on itself, and I'll just push this into the other open end, exactly an inch. Okay, so now what I want to do is, I think I had a pin, there it is put this up on my sewing machine table. And I need to stitch over this to keep it together. And I'm going to stitch it back and forth right where the raw edge of that loop was to begin with. I'm trying to get my sewing machine where you can see what I'm doing. Okay, so this is the raw edge right here where my finger is, right there. And I'm just going to sew it with a zigzag stitch. And then I'm going to put my machine in the reverse stitch mode and go back over it. just like that. Okay, so because this has been stitched together right here, I want to pull it down to where just this side of the D-ring. So, whoa, just like this. So here's the D-ring and here's where that stitch is, and just kind of let that hang out right there. Clip these threads that are just kind of going every which way. All right, and now I need to make the other loop. So let's take care of that real quick. And pinch like so. I have to really hold it tight and then just pull this through like so. And a pin also works. And then I can take my tweezer and push if there's anything that needs to be, you know, pushed out. All right, now I'm going to clip all of these off. That out of the way. Oh. Now there are specific instructions. Yeah. We still have to press along those fold lines like we did on the handle. So this little seam is going to run along one side and our fold lines are here and here. So basically we want both pieces of this handle like so, and we're going to fold this across where our stitching line is. So make sure you have it right where you want it, and lap under one raw end and then fold under. That one's a little bit easier to fold under, I think. Yeah, fold under the one that's going to be on the top, nice and tidy. You want it to look pretty. I'll hold it so you can kind of see what I've got there. So this is folded under on top of itself, like so. And we're going to stitch that down. I'm probably going to do a straight stitch, and I don't want to hit my D-ring, so be really careful. You do embroidery and then have your initials there, but this is what it looks like. So I have my handle, I have my little D-ring, and I have my little covering up that seam loop. That's what that looks like. I'm waiting for it to catch up and focus a little bit. There we go. All right, so we want this to be laid flat like that. And then we're going to fold this all in half, keeping everything inside and out of the way. And we're going to go all the way around. But first we have to unzip the zipper. I'm backing up to lock these stitches. Okay, so here we go. We're going to flip it from the open zipper side. Boy, is it... I may not be able to turn this thing right side out because it is truly like cardboard. Poke this side through if I can. That is... I don't think I was able to get it pushed all the way through. I'm not going to lie. That was... There's like spots where it's not pushed all the way out yet. But That's the inside. And without the bow, this is the outside. So let's get the bow made. Okay, so once we get this made, we just fold under one raw edge by just a little bit, and then fold this to the center and this over the top so that it looks like this. And then I'm going to just stitch straight line right through all of those layers, right in the middle of that. Threads cut. We're going to put this right in the middle. And then tie the loops that we made earlier. Loop it over on top of itself again. And if you want to stitch it down, you can. There we go. I just feel like I don't need to. I think that is pretty cute just the way it is. There's that little handle. If we zip it open, there's the inside. I feel like there's a rogue thread. Yeah. So I honestly love the little pattern, but I cannot recommend using the Fuse and Shape. And I'm going to make this again, but I am not going to use Fuse and Shape so that I can show you what it should look like. And also with the pattern instructions have us stitching this together with the raw edges, and I think we should do it where we open out the lining two pieces and the outer two pieces and stitch all the way around except leave an opening in the lining pieces, and then turn it that way so that the inside is not you know, littered with raw edges. Now I don't mind in this one, it was my first one. The zipper is a very easy install. If you've ever had questions about whether or not you could do a zipper, this would be a great one to practice with. So, and then we have our little wristlet wallet. I think it turned out really cute. I like the way it turned out. We did tea-dyed fabric. We have our little charms, we have little quilting lines, we have a little handle, but I'm going to do it differently with different fabrics for a completely different look, and we'll see what happens. I hope you'll join me for that. If you liked this little wallet project, I mean, look at this. It's like a little sewing class wallet. It does hold a lot, I will say. It does hold a lot. If you have not subscribed yet, please consider doing so. I would love to have you join us and tell me about the projects that you're working on or that you want help with or that you've enjoyed doing over the past 12 months. I hope that everybody has just a fantastic January and a wonderful year. 2022, here we come, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.